You cannot switch between sections. You finish a section 40 minutes, then the next, then the next. That's how we do. As much as it is not important in the percentile, it is slightly important in your no negative marking. But then from the 9th question, you start losing 0.1 marks. For example, so we have something called QADI, Quantitative Aptitude and Data Interpretation. Hey folks, we keep saying this every now and then. If you are preparing for CAT, it is highly important that you don't stop with CAT and you probably add one or other two OMETs in the back, so that the chances of getting into a B school, your openings get better. And also sometimes something goes wrong with one, you probably have another door to knock upon. So with that said, let's talk about something that has been in the news recently. So we have our XAT 2027 registration opening up in the 15th of July. Probably we'll have to see what needs to be done, what is the paper about, what are the sections, who can apply. We need to have one idea about all of that. So in this video, let's compile every data and have a look at every single thing that we need to do. We'll have an overview of it. We'll look at the pattern, strategy, eligibility, and what is so special about XAT, what is that one special point. We'll have a view about all of that. So to begin with, we'll have an overview. So we see that XAT is conducted by XLRI Jamshedpur in association with XIMB on behalf of them. It happens once a year and it happens on the first Sunday of January. So it's a paper it's a test that happens once every year. The first Sunday of January, that's what it is. And then the format, if you look at the format, obviously this is a computer-based test. It runs for 95 questions and 180 minutes. We'll talk about the split up later. And then obviously this opens up with hundreds of college opportunities. But then the top ones happen to be XLRI, XIMB, MICA, IMT Ghaziabad. There are a bunch of colleges, some brilliant colleges. Colleges that take CAT score, take XAT score. There's some intersection over here. That's a beautiful test to appear for. Nice one. The other advantage is that you write CAT in the last Sunday of November and this is in the first Sunday of January. So you're looking at 5 weeks gap. So the moment you are preparing for CAT, you are pretty much ready for XAT. Except that there is one or two things that you might want to tweak in your preparation and then get it better. Right. So moving forward, if you look at the pattern, you are looking at a bunch of sections here. So we'll attack them one after the other. So we have something called QADI, Quantitative Aptitude and Data Interpretation. Now you don't have, like when you do CAT, you have QA, DILR and VARC. Or rather the order is VALR, DILR and QA. Because in CAT, you cannot switch between sections. You finish a section 40 minutes, then the next, then the next. That's how we do. But here, you have 3 sections in the first go. You have QADI, Quantitative Aptitude and Data Interpretation, 28 questions over there. VALR, that's 26 questions, verbal ability and logical reasoning. And then you have something called decision making here, it's 21 questions. And there's one section that you might probably be new here in this format, which is GK and current affairs. You happen to have 20 questions over there. If you add all of this, you will sum it up to 95 questions. And the best part is, the first 3 sections put together, the first 75 questions that you see over here is for 170 minutes. These 3 sections will be for 170 minutes, whereas your GK section, those 20 questions will be for 10 minutes, totally taking the tally to 95 questions and 180 minutes. This is new. Now you might be wondering, oh, GK, I'm probably weak at it. Current affairs is something that I'm not really good at. So worry not. Your GK scores are not important when it comes to your percentile. But then in your final round process, they play a part. So just like as much as it is not important in the percentile, it is slightly important in your final interview process. So be updated. We'll talk about what to do and when to do, a bunch of things. We'll have an understanding about it. But then when you look at the marking pattern, marking scheme here, every correct answer gives you +1. Every incorrect answer gives you a quarter of a mark is being removed. And then for unattempted questions, you lose 0.1 marks. But then you don't lose it for all marks. Now they have given you a tolerance level. Now for the first 8 questions that you don't attempt, no negative marking. But then from the 9th question, you start losing 0.1 marks. For example, if you haven't attempted 10 questions, it's not per section, it is overall. It is overall. So the first 75 questions not in GK, it's in the first 3 sections. Now if you don't attempt 8 questions, there are no penalty for it. But from the 9th question, if you don't attempt 9 questions, if you skip them, for 1 question you will use 0.1. For 10 questions that you don't attempt, 2 questions 0.1, which is 0.2, and so on. And the other beauty of this section here is, other part of this is, these 3 sections, as I told you, runs for 170 minutes. You can switch between sections. Now it's not like you have to do the first section, wait there and then come to the next one. That's not the case. Now you can spend time if you want, which we are not obviously going to do. You can spend all 170 minutes in one section. Don't do that, just kidding. Never do that. But then sometimes when it comes to CAT, we have a strong section and slightly moderately weaker section. We don't want to spend over there. So in sections that you want to spend a little more time, we would love to do that, which is not available in CAT. But here, 170 minutes, obviously split it into 3 parts. But don't split, no one is going to split it into 3 equal parts. If you do that, nice and good. But then if you want a little more time with one of the sections, maybe that will give you another 3-4 questions. Feel free to take that, compensate it with one other section over here. Between these 3, feel free to do it. You can switch between sections. Obviously, you can switch between questions, but here you can also switch between sections. That's a huge advantage, but at the same time, that might cost you something. We sometimes get carried away with a bunch of one particular section, and you probably might lose out on the other. So don't get carried away, but at the same time, utilize the fact that you can switch between sections. That's a nice advantage to talk about. Right. Now moving forward, if I am looking at decision making, what is decision making? We saw that there are 21 questions from decision making, but what is decision making? We call it BDM, business decision making. Now, it is more, the one super skill that you need here obviously happens to be critical reasoning. So you will be given a caselet and you will be asked about what possibly would you do. So it's more about a decision based or more of logically deducing facts and then answering them. It could be on multiple layers. So for example, it could be conflict resolution, leadership, it could be resource allocation, managerial skill, business caselets. It could be anything. It could give you a scenario and it would probably ask you, what would you do? What is the ideal solution? Something like that. And to solve for this, BDM doesn't have a solid foundation anywhere, but the best place to always go for is previous year paper. Highest priority. Now there is no syllabus for decision making. There's nothing that you can really do. You can create a bunch of questions, but obviously the best place to learn what sort of questions come, how do I go around it, how do I attempt it, what should I do, how is the question is being framed, what thought process is being put over there, is all something that we need to have some understanding about. And undoubtedly the best place to get any of that starts from your PYQs. So ensure that if you can get this in the bag, it's great, because this happens to be slightly more difficult section than the other 2. The other 2 are moderate to difficult. If there is a comparison between CAT or XAT, XAT is slightly trickier, not difficult. I wouldn't use the word difficult, but the complexity is slightly different. It's challenging. It could be difficult. Probably the synonym for that would be difficult. It's moderate to difficult. Right. If you put CAT on a scale of 8, this would be some 8.3, 8.4 rating difficulty, so close to that. But then the QA part will come up with some nice simpler questions than what we see in CAT. You also happen to have DI in the section. You'll probably get 3 DI questions and 3 questions each, somewhere around 9 questions over there, which is nice, which is moderately easy. At the same time, it could be challenging. Some of those questions, the numerical part will be tricky, or the understanding or the complexity of the question might change. You need to work around it. The transition has to happen. You cannot go with the same mindset that you go for CAT. CAT is a 2-hour test. It's a 120-minute test. This is a 180-minute test, 3 hours. Now sitting for 3 hours in the same place is challenging. If you think 2 hours is difficult, obviously 3 hours is difficult, more difficult, right? So the transition has to happen, and the transition happens along with decision making. This takes the top priority. 21 questions from here, which needs some attention. In fact, more attention, because the other 2 sections has been covered with your other OMETs. Now XAT is the only paper that comes with this section called decision making. No other paper does. This is absolutely unique. The most unique section that you will ever come across, which needs some attention. If you can get your hands on previous year paper, some 5 years paper, some last 5-6 years paper, run through all of them, that itself solidly gives you 100 to 120 questions. What else do you need? If you can get that in the bag, you have some idea on how to attempt a question. Get that in the bag. So these are all some challenging parts that we have. All need some managerial skills, some critical reasoning, some reading comprehension is required. You need to read a caselet and need to infer everything. So this is more of a verbal section, but then more logically deduced. So ensure that you get this in the bag, have some comfort around it, go around questions, practice them, keep doing it. This will all get better. When you talk about the eligibility here, anyone with a UG is allowed to apply for it. The best part is there is no minimum percentage required. Unlike other few exams that we have, like 50%, 45% and stuff, XAT does not have any minimum percentage. Any percentage in your UG is still accepted as usual. No age bar, no attempt bar. You can attempt it as many times as you want at any age you want. There is no restriction on that. No restriction on percentages, no minimum percentage, no upper limit for your attempt or your age. And anyone with a UG, if you have a bare minimum qualification of a UG, you are good to go. A bachelor's degree is fine to go with that. Right. Now, finally, coming to the next part, strategy. So what needs to be done? How do you go around it? Now, remember this, you have done a bunch of tests. Obviously, CAT comes before this, and most of you would be preparing for CAT extensively, and an extension would be XAT or SNAP or NMAT or whatever it is. Or if you are doing it the other way, still not a problem. So XAT probably is the last test that you attempt. So you have given some other test prior to this and then coming here. So remember, there needs to be a transition phase. There needs to be a specific transition phase which needs to be done. So don't go with the same mindset for every test. The exam pattern differs, the time duration differs, the question complexity differs. So the same mindset might not help you. But the one thing that probably works through and through is your preparation. So if you go with it, your foundation building. What do I mean by foundation building? Whatever you are preparing for. So I'm going to go with my superset being CAT. That's how I look at it at least. So your superset is CAT. You prepare for DILR, you prepare for QA, you prepare for VARC. So extensively learn them. It needs to be super, like you have to be on the top of your game to get better and better, obviously. So keep practicing it, keep attending classes or taking notes or learning it all by yourself, whatever you're doing. Ensure that you build foundation. There's nothing specifically you need to do for foundation building here. Whatever you're doing for other tests, parallelly covers this up. One difference that you might probably want to focus is your decision making part, which needs to be done separately because other tests don't have it. Right. So strengthening and sectional practice needs to be there. Sectional practice, more sectional practice on decision making now, because other sectionals are covered with your other preparation, but then you have to transition, come here, do it under that time limit. So that's something that you need to work around. So keep practicing, maintain the error log, go back, revisit, learn, practice, give it as a feedback loop again, and cover all the gaps that you have. You keep doing this in a cyclic process, everything will start to fall in place. So that's not really a concern that we have here. Then the next part is more important, your mock season and XAT transition. Of course, the transition needs to happen now. So your mock season, the moment, if I want to give you a timeline from here, we are talking about July, somewhere in the first week of July here, August, September, October, November, December, January. You are looking at 6 months. So in the 6 months phase, probably my recommendation obviously would be to give mocks after CAT, because the overlap might probably hamper your preparation for CAT. So once the moment you finish, sign off with CAT, start taking your mocks extensively. That 1 month gap, whatever you have, start giving it extensively, because you need to fix your mind around 3-hour test. So there's only one slot. You don't have different slots. 2 to 5 is a slot that everyone writes. So you need to sit for 3 hours and do it. So immediately after CAT, start giving your mocks, start focusing on it. Transition from one test to the other. Transition your mindset from 120 minutes to 180 minutes. Transition it from sectional parts to an overall. So distribution, all of this, you have to take advantage of everything that you have. At the same time, don't get carried away with the advantage that is being given. Both of them are important. So transition here, and then finally intensive and final revision. Last 2 weeks, January, probably the first week of January and the last week of December, unfortunately, which happens to intersect with the festive season that we have here, Christmas and New Year and other things. I know it's difficult, but then hey, you are doing something for your growth, so obviously spend some time with it. Take breaks wherever necessary. Undoubtedly, I'm not saying don't celebrate. Go take some time off, but then come back and typically cover up every gaps that you have. Keep reading. The most important part about XAT is that, of course, even it goes with CAT. Most important section happens to be decision making here. It's very new. It's very new for most of us. So the reading is essential to ensure that we don't end up with this mental fatigue. You have to endure 3 hours at a stretch. You have to read and read and read and read, and you ensure that the fatigue doesn't hit you up. So keep reading, ensure that you build a healthy practice of that. Keep solving questions over and again. Take breaks wherever necessary. If you want to step out, take a break, get some fresh air, and then come back, continue it. Follow the process repeatedly, give feedbacks from your performances, revisit this every now and then, and I am pretty sure there is no reason for us to say why we are not cracking it. So keep doing this, do better. There's nothing that's going to stop us. Best wishes.